Ich weiß nicht, was soll es bedeuten, dass ich, was TD bedeutet, nicht begreifen kann. Heißt es Turbodiesel oder Temperaturdisplay? Muss ich mir überlegen nochmal? Denn es hat keinen Sinn. Es erfolgt das Wort Signal. Oder es hat was zu tun mit Drehzahl. Das ist noch nicht gewiss. So fragen wir dann Fix Your Mercedes. Hi. In this video we're going to be talking about the ignition control module. One of the subscribers asked me for the second time to make this video, and well, here I wanted to make it, and not just because of that, but because if you see this number 100 above my head, this is my 100th video I made for the channel, and I wanted something special to make in this video. So our today's topic is going to be the ignition control module, or the EZL. The same way the ECU has its sensors, the EZL has them too. At first, we have the ignition starter switch, that's clamp 15, and that's our voltage supply we have. Afterwards, we have the ground, and then the next one in the row is the sensor I've been talking about least, and it's called the CPS, or the crankshaft position sensor. This sensor has the task to read the revolutions from the flywheel and to send them to the EZL. I'm going to be talking about that in more details afterwards. We have the vacuum line. This line has to report the EZL about the engine load, and the EZL has then an integrated pressure sensor, which from it reads if the engine is under load or not. And now we have the CTS. You know, I've been talking about the CTS, and that's that thing that the older types have two plugs, and the newer ones 4. Well, the older ones have one plug for the ECU and the second one for the EZL, and the newer ones have 2 plugs for the ECU and 2 for the EZL, because now the EZL has to know exactly about the temperature of the coolant. The same thing goes with the throttle position sensor, or the TPS. if we have the closed throttle, the EZL has to know about that in order to adjust the timing, as well as the wide open throttle. Now we have the resistance trimming plug R16, and there we have ignition maps, and that's, let's say, about it. Some special sensors on this device are the transmission overload protection switch, the air intake temperature sensor, and the speed limit. And that's everything. Let me just tell you what these two plugs are for. Here we have numbers. That's 15. It's the ignition starter switch. Number 16, ignition coil clamp 1. Number 31, the ground. And we have TD, that's the RPM signal. Here we have the sensors. Number 1 is the coolant temperature sensor. Number 2, the TPS. Number 3, the resistance trimming plug. M102-983 engines have here transmission protection or overload switch. Number 4 is free, except for the engines M102-910/96/98 beginning from the September 89, and M102-983/99 engines that here have the air intake temperature sensor. The M103-984 engines with automatic have here ground, and the M117-968 have here transmission protection overload switch. Now let me explain. If you have engines M102-983/99 or M117-968 with automatic transmission, then you will have this sensor, because this sensor determines how the transmission is going to switch gears. As for the air intake temperature sensor, that's for the engines M102-91/96/98 CAT versions starting from the September 89, as well as for the engines M102-983/99. And the last sensor in the row is the electronical speedo. This sensor is only present in engines M117-968, because there you have a speed limit. All these sensors go into the EZL, and the bottom line of everything is to create the TD or the RPM signal. If this signal cannot be created, then, well, the car cannot be started. This RPM signal supplies the X11 round socket, and it runs the RPM gauge in the instrument cluster, the fuel pump relay, the AC compressor, the ECU, and many other components of the system. How does it look like as you start the engine? We have the flywheel, and we have two notches on this flywheel, talking about M102 engines. I'm going to be talking in this video about all the engines: M102, M103, M116, and M117. As you start cranking the engine, the notches, you have two of them on M102 engines, you have three of them on M103 engines, and you have four of them on M117 and 16, of course. So again, as the flywheel starts rotating, these notches then determine the timing, how it's going to be. And that lasts until the engine achieves 450 RPM. From 460, then the EZL takes over the ignition and sets it as it has to be, based on its sensors, based on the resistance timing plug, on the TPS, on the CTS, on the vacuum line. The ignition module has also the following functions: closing angle, primary current limitation up to about 2000 RPM, as well as its shutdown, engine off, ignition on. The optimal performance of the module is achieved by dwell angle adjustment. An idle adjusted dwell angle is achieved when at any phase of the engine, no matter the battery voltage and the RPM, almost the same voltage is being created. While the engine is achieving the operation temperature, the timing changes also in order to achieve the operating temperature. When on idle or when driving with the accelerator depressed, there is a fixed ignition point for the engines M102 and M103 when the throttle is closed. It's not influenced either from the vacuum line, the CTS, or the resistor trimming plug. If it comes to interruption or on the CTS, resistance plus infinity, There is no fixed ignition point on the Bosch ignition module anymore, and some other is being created. The ignition is being modified in advance. The closed throttle on the M16 and the 17 engines, it's possible to adjust the vacuum on idle as well. There is no fixed ignition point on idle. It's effective on idle as well, without vacuum. When the throttle is wide open, the timing is adjusted according to the fixed ignition point. The timing is being adjusted to advance, higher torque. On the M102 and M103 engines, the ignition module recognizes the wide open throttle from the input signals, vacuum, and engine RPM. On the M116 and the 117 engines, the ignition module determines the fixed ignition point. The wide open throttle is being recognized on the contacts for the wide open throttle on the TPS. The M102 983/99 engines have two different ignitions in the module. Depending on the air intake temperature sensor, the timing is being adjusted like this. Below 25 degrees C, the timing goes in advance. Above that, the timing goes in retard. The M102 96/98 engines that have the air intake temperature sensor, as the air temperature rises, the timing goes in retard. The M102 983/99 and M117 968 engines are also equipped with a transmission overload protection switch that is integrated in the module itself. The M103 984 engines with the automatic transmission, in order to recognize the needed timing, the ground is connected to the plug B, pin 4. The resistor trimming plug. On these plugs, depending on the engine operation, the timing can be readjusted. There are two types of timings in the module. Without the catalytic converter, EZL, ECE, or EZL, ECES, and with the catalytic converter, EZL, CAT, K80. The module on the M102 983, M103 980, as well as on M117 968 engines, have just one timing. The timing adjustment for leaded or unleaded is done on a special resistor trimming plug. Security measures on the ignition module. If there is a short circuit or interruption on the CTS, the module operates on the fixed ignition point and adjusts the timing for about 10 degrees in retard. The overheat protection. As the coolant temperature achieves from 90 up to 100 degrees, the timing is adjusted in retard in order to cool down the engine. The example on M102 91/96/98 engines CAT, this protection begins at 100 degrees C as followed. At 100 degrees, for 2 degrees in retard, at 110 for 4, and at 120 for 5 degrees in retard. Here is the air intake temperature added, and that way the timing is maximally adjusted for 12 degrees in retard. The crankshaft position sensor. For the module management, the CPS reads the RPM from the flywheel. It reads the revolutions from the coaxial cable from the plug 7 on the module. If the ignition module gets no signal from this sensor, the module cannot be functioning. One part of the CPS is located at the notches on the flywheel without touching it, and the other part on the ignition module. What indicates the mechanic damage, the notches or the CPS? AC voltage under its nominal value. The nominal values on the notches differ significantly, or no AC voltage. The air temperature sensor. As the temperature rises, the resistance is lower. Same way as with the CTS. As the air temperature reaches 32 degrees C, the timing goes in retard, and it reaches its peak at 50 degrees C. At 32 degrees, 1 degree in retard, at 40, 5, and at 50 degrees, 7 degrees in retard. Resistance trimming plug. This is for leaded or unleaded gas. This function is predicted for the cars to be adapted on leaded gas as well, if necessary. Position N. At the time these cars were manufactured, we had leaded and unleaded fuel, so that these cars could adapt on any kind of fuel necessary. And that is done on this resistance trimming plug. As well as I remember, you have 7 positions. The first one is for 99 octane run. I'm talking about the European octane number now. Run. Position number 2 is for 98 octane. Position 3 has some value. Position 4 is for 95 octane number. It's labeled S. Position 5, nothing. Position 6 is the end position. It's for 91 octane, and position 7 is empty. If you have any place there that or if there is any gas station where you can find 99 or 98 octane, then you can readjust this plug. But as it says on these cars, that the best performance is achieved on the S position, and that's the European 95 octane and the US 91. Then it's the best solution just to leave this plug there on the S position, and just don't touch it, don't turn it at all. M102 983/99 engines with the automatic have the feature transmission protection or overload switch, and this feature is on the position 7 on the resistance trimming block. The M117-968 engines feature here the speed limit, and out of that reason the position 7 must not be used. The M102-983 with the automatic, as well as the M117-968 engines, feature in the module the transmission protection overload switch in order to protect the gears from the thermal overload at high RPM, the positions 1, 2, and 2, 3. With the protection, the timing is being adjusted in about 400 milliseconds for 5 degrees in retard before the TDC, lower torque. This protection is activated while downshifting as well, 3-2. It's activated the moment the RPMs are higher than 4000 and the vacuum less than 300 millibar. And the last feature we have is the speed limit. This function features M117-968 engines only. As soon as 250 kilometers per hour is achieved, the ground is activated from the electronic speedo to the ignition module. This way, the timing is adjusted for 10 degrees in retard before the TDC. The torque starts falling and the speed is being limited. This feature is activated as soon as following conditions are achieved. The RPMs are higher than 5000, the vacuum falls under 300 millibar, and when 250 kilometers per hour is achieved. As soon as the speed decreases to 245, this feature switches off. So my dear ones, if you enjoyed this video, then please don't click the button skip ad. It is going to help me a lot. And till the next video, happy Mercedesing. Bye.